We have been looking at a topic from the Buddha's teachings that is referred to so many times, and it's called the gradual training. And what the gradual training is it's the Eightfold Noble Path lived out in a human life. What does it look like? What do these, factors like right view and right motivation, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right stillness? What does that look like, incorporated into a human life? And we're at the part of the gradual training where the Buddha gives instructions about this thing that sometimes gets translated as sense restraint. I prefer the translation guarding the senses or protecting the senses. And this really is the part of the Eightfold Noble Path that is beginning to, where we're entering the area of meditation. And this is really a stepping stone, and it's an aspect, a part of right effort. So that it's the last three factors of the Eightfold Noble Path: right effort, right mindfulness, and right stillness that are the descriptions of meditation. So I'm hoping to talk about guarding the senses initially just a little bit theoretically and then practically. And I think the beginning is to just talk a little bit about our senses. So we've all grown up, being taught about the five senses: the ear, the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, and touch sensation. And in Buddhism, the Buddha adds a sixth sense, and it's the mind. And it's very valuable that he frames it this way, because it helps us understand that thoughts are just another sense contact, and it helps us frame our thinking and our ideas in a way that's a little bit less personal and sticky. So he breaks down the senses in like what is happening when we're seeing, or what is happening when we're hearing. He breaks it down into four aspects, maybe five. We'll figure it out. So the first is the sense organ. That would be the eye, or the ear, the nose, the tongue, the touch sensation, or the mind. So that's the first part. The second is whatever data, whatever stimuli meets that sense organ. So in the case of the eye, it's visual form. In the case of the ear, it's sound waves. In the case of the smell, it's odors. In the case of the tongue, it's tastes. In the case of touch sensation, it's contact. And in that contact, there's actually two systems in the body. There's the light touch, and then there's deep. Those are actually two different afferent systems. And then in the case of the mind, it's a thought, it's an idea, it's a memory, it's something that is arising in the mind. So you have the sense organ, and then you have the stimuli that corresponds with that sense organ. And then the Buddha talks about there has to be contact. So that whole, if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, according to Buddhism, it would be no, there's not a sound. There are sound waves, but there's not a sound, because there's not contact. So the sense organ, the stimuli, and then the coming together of those two is the contact. And the Buddha says, as soon as there's contact, there's a knowing. And the Buddha actually talks about consciousness in terms of 6 consciousnesses. That there's eye consciousness, there's ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body tactile consciousness, and mind consciousness. Another key for us in breaking down this idea of this permanent, unchanging, solid being, self, with my consciousness. No, there's these 6 consciousnesses that are part of having a body and a mind. And then the Buddha goes on, so there's those 4 things happening, and the Buddha goes on to say that the next thing that happens like at the same time as the contact and the knowing, the consciousness, is that there's a feeling tone, and there's a flavor. It's either pleasant or unpleasant or somewhere in between. So this is the Buddha's description of what's happening when we're experiencing the world. And he says that our senses and this, the data, and then the contact, and then the knowing of it is our world. So this is the Buddhist description of the senses. And he goes on, he gives a wonderful, I'm trying to think of what order to go in. He gives a wonderful simile, metaphor of our senses and what's happening for us with these senses. And he actually describes the senses as 6 animals. And when he gives this metaphor with these animals, there's the idea that and I think that they're a little bit arbitrary, the animals. I'll try and remember them. A snake and a crocodile and a bird and a dog, a hyena, and a monkey. So the 6th one, the 6th sense being the mind. I'm presuming that this is where this whole topic of monkey mind, if you've been around meditation much, you've probably heard this term of monkey mind, and it's just describing what a monkey does. It's jumping from branch to branch to branch to branch, and you experience that when you first start to meditate, and even if you've meditated for a long time, that there are times when the mind is just jumping around. And what the Buddha describes is that, that the snake, wants to go to the anthill, and the crocodile wants to go to the water, and the bird wants to fly up in the sky, and the hyena wants to go to the charnel ground, and the dog wants to go to the village, and the monkey wants to go to the forest. And it's a graphic illustration of our predicament being here in this body mind, in this sense realm. Our senses get, unless we begin a spiritual path, and unless we start to try and live a very conscientious, very conscious life, our senses kind of run the show, especially if you include the mind. So, and there's this sense of they're just pulling us around, That's why we're flying across the globe, to see this special building, or the stars from the, we're just, and you just think about our world and how the senses are have a loud voice, Um, I was a classical musician, and I just ended up so snobby about what orchestra and what conductor I would listen to, and people that have had other training, artists or cooks, you just end up getting, like there's only this, and you have to have these ingredients from this place in the world, and just this is our predicament, and the Buddha does not endorse this. The world does. We just think that this is sort of the more amazing, beautiful things that I see, the more incredible, music or drumming that I hear, or singing or whatever, on and on and on. That this will meet some deep needs inside of myself, and the Buddha is saying, no, you're actually being jerked around by these things. You're being pulled here and pulled there, and it's endless, and it won't deliver the goods that you have been conditioned. We've been brought up to think that it will. I often refer to my grandchildren. You really see this being jerked around when you're with little children. They'll be playing with something and enjoying it, and then they'll see someone else playing with something else, and immediately that's what they want. Just the senses are really, really, really running the show and jerking us around. So the Buddha is, as we come to meditation, is inviting us to step back and look at our predicament and be willing to open to what he's saying, and become honest about how is this working for me. Just running from one little hit to the next little hit throughout my day. You wake up and you have your coffee to wake up, and then you get in your car and you put on your loud music, and it just goes on and on and on, and then you come home, and so then you put on some soft music to wind down, then you have a glass of wine, and this is just day after day after day. And the Buddha says there's another way, and that is to start to understand our predicament, understand our senses more realistically. And realistically, our senses are to protect us. It's very interesting. That's their function. They're biological, and they're to keep us alive, so that we know when there's danger. We know when we're hungry. We know when we're thirsty. This is the function of our senses. So it's very beautiful. The real function and meaning of our senses is to keep us alive, is to protect us. And then the Buddha is introducing the idea of then, in turn, we start to protect our senses. It's very, very beautiful. And the idea of protecting our senses is with meditation in mind. And so the continuation of the metaphor of these 6 animals just pulling us and jerking us around, the Buddha describes, he goes on and gives a following metaphor. When you begin to protect the senses, it's like you've put a post in the ground, and you tether your senses to this post. And so there's just instead of this chaos, there just starts to become a little bit of order and containment and limits. And when you do start to protect the senses and guard the senses, be careful about how much sensory input you incur through a day, and what kind of sensory input you expose yourself to. You start to feel the benefit in the body, in the heart, and in the mind. It's very interesting. So, we're living in a time where there's actually more, that the Buddha talks about sensory input actually as impingement. It's like pressing in on us and at times hurting us. It's not this amazing thing to be celebrated. It's something to be really understood and to be conscious and careful about. So we're in this conundrum that we live in a time where the amount of sensory input that we experience, each one of us throughout the day, is so much more, the volume of it and the intensity of it is so much more than, think about 100 years ago. There weren't all this visual, even 100 years ago, was there even the radio? And you think about, it was a very different world. And you can see the effect that it's having, all of this sensory input, where our attention spans are just decreasing, and our wanting and craving for stimulation is increasing. So the Buddha is proposing, that often the Buddha's teachings get framed as, going against the stream. And this is an area where we would especially be going against the stream if we really take these teachings on board, and we will benefit. We will feel the benefit very, very quickly. So I referred to this conundrum. What's happening is that there's so much impingement throughout the day. There's just, my gosh, you can't even fill your car up with gas without being bombarded with advertisements. You go to the public bathroom, and especially for women, I don't know what it's like for the guys, but, and you close the stall door, and now sometimes it's even like a moving advertisement. This is what the Buddha is talking about, this impingement on the senses, and that we have this beautiful invitation and these wonderful instructions about pushing back, countering it. There was, before I was Buddhist, there was what was it? Not ad busters, but there was. I won't go there. Stop. Okay. The conundrum is that because of all of the impingement, our nervous systems are quite jacked up, and so what happens is that we tend to we're not settled, we're not nourished, and so it makes it harder to make wise, careful choices. So we're just in this catch-22 where it's just so intense, and then we end up reaching out for the path of least resistance, that you just reach out for more of this junk. And people know that, that our phones are doing that to us. This whole Netflix thing where you can watch anything at any time, and then we need to understand that it's all designed. It's all designed to get us being on the screen longer, consuming more. We live in such a capitalistic consuming culture, and this is the opposite. It's becoming a really very careful consumer, kind of a non-consumer, making wise choices. But to make those wise choices, you have to first somehow begin to step back and begin to get some grounding and some space, some air. yeah, I mean, Netflix, YouTube, you watch something and then they just reload the next one. And it's hard to figure out how to get it to stop. Like it's amazing. It's really, and it's very calculated. So, and it's completely the opposite of the Buddha's instructions. So we're living in this day and age. I think we're living. It's tougher. It is, especially this area, and this is why people are needing to. We've all felt it in our life, just the overwhelm from being in the city and being around all that noise and all that busyness and activity and this is why at times we've all had this experience of I just need to get out of the city. I just need to get into nature. I just need to have some quiet. This is the nervous system. This is a wise part of the nervous system speaking to us. Yeah. So that's sort of the theoretical framework that I wanted to try and lay out. And then to get practical, I'll just read the description of sense of guarding the senses that comes directly from the Buddha. And this is many, many, many times in the discourses. This particular discourse is just in the middle length discourses, discourse 51. But almost any time that the gradual training is described, which is, like a quarter or a third of the discourses the Buddha gave, this description is often there. And the they is the meditator, or the person that's trying to practice guarding the senses. So when they see a sight with their eyes, they don't get caught up in the features and details. That's the real key, and hopefully we'll talk about that. If the faculty of sight were left unrestrained, bad, unskillful qualities of covetousness and displeasure would become overwhelming. For this reason, they practice restraint, protecting the faculty of sight and achieving its restraint. When they hear a sound with their eyes, when they smell an odor with their nose, when they taste a flavor with their tongue, when they feel a touch with their body, when they know an idea with their mind, they don't get caught up with the features and details. If the faculty of mind and all the others, the faculty of the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body touch sensation, or the mind, were left unrestrained, bad, unskillful qualities of covetousness and displeasure would become overwhelming. For this reason, they practice restraint, protecting the faculty of mind and eye and ear and nose and mouth and body, and achieving its restraint. And when they have this noble sense of restraint and protection, they feel in themselves pleasure that is blameless. Very, very beautiful. So, this idea of protecting the senses, this description that the Buddha has given us, it does not mean that we just start to live a cloistered life and that we start to, push things away. That's falling into the camp of displeasure. And we've all had that, no, not another email, no, the phone's ringing, no, I'm just going to go to the bathroom. I remember as a young mom, just go to the bathroom. And they just come straight into the bathroom. Anyway, the protecting the senses is not okay, I'm just going to wear really dark sunglasses and earmuffs and, no. Protecting the senses happens at this, at the consciousness level. When the contact has happened and that feeling tone, that flavor of pleasant, unpleasant, neither pleasant nor unpleasant has arisen, and then there's the knowing, and it happens there. And so the Buddha is suggesting to understand that there is this consciousness at every sense organ, with every sense channel, and that we can start to have more awareness of that and take more responsibility and have more choice. That we're not just these sitting ducks. We're not just victims of our circumstances. That we can. So the stimulation is there, but then we become. There's the knowing of this stimulation, like, wow, this is a really loud conversation, and then we get to make choices about whether or not we're going to get caught up in the features and the details. And so the instructions the Buddha gives is that we start to counter the tendency that's happening. In other words, I go to work and I'm trying to take care of a backlog of emails, and my colleagues are standing at the door of my office having a really loud conversation. So the Buddha says that we can start to have choices there. First of all, the most important thing is for me to understand what is happening inside of myself. Irritation is arising, and now it's important for me to, and this is a real pivotal choice point, this irritation is arising. And so depending on our conditioning, for some people they're just going to lash out because of that irritation. Other people are going to collapse because of that irritation, feel the victim and get tied up in a knot, like, well, I can't say anything because I'm irritated, and if I say something it will come out nasty. These are what tend to happen. And so the first thing I think is that you attend to that irritation. You realize, oh, I'm irritated, so but I'm not a victim here. And you take responsibility for that irritation, and then you realize I need to do something, and then you try and do it, not from that place of irritation, but from that place of protecting. When you think about a really good parent protects the child. They set them up for success. When we're not protecting and guarding our senses, it's like we're the parent that lets the children go out and play in traffic. This is what we're doing. And this is how many of us have lived our lives, because we've never been exposed to this angle. And it's so powerful. So many choices come up. You could realize, what? I can just turn my attention away from that and really absorb into the emails. Or I can't do that. Okay, I can stand up and say, "Oh, God, sorry, I'm ending up distracted," and just close the door, or whatever, Or you could ask them, "Wow, I'm, and you can do it skillfully. Wow, it's like super interesting what you're talking about. So I'm ending up listening to you, and I need to be doing this. Is it okay if you, go to your own office?" I'm just making up a hypothetical example, but this is what the Buddha is pointing to, that we can make more and more wise choices for our own heart, mind, nervous system. And as we start to do this, it gains momentum, and then the impetus, the desire to reach out for these cheap hits starts to diminish, because we're more nourished, and then it's this beautiful thing. And this, I would say, of all the things I say this morning, this is the most important aspect, I think, of protecting the senses, guarding the senses, that the motivation is not fear or repression or self-denial. The motivation is, I want to give a gift to myself and have my own body, mind, be as grounded and settled as possible. And that the wise choices are coming from this idea of giving yourself a gift, not repressing or denying yourself in any way. And the Buddha is not saying that pleasant sense contact is in and of itself bad in any way. It's kind of essential. The pleasant sense contact is essential. It's a huge part of the meditation development. As you start to settle the mind and unknot the body, and have more times in meditation that are still and calm, it becomes very beautiful and very, very, very pleasant. But it's a pleasantness that the Buddha says. He ends this description. They feel in themselves pleasure that is blameless. Very, 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 very nourishing. So, the last thing I want to say is very practical. It's about the cell phone. The cell phone is designed to get us addicted. It's just like the cigarette companies from 60, 70 years ago, designed to get us addicted. The cell phone is the same because it's coming from capitalism and consumerism. And what now is like this hot commodity is our attention, our time, our data. And very, very calculated. And if you need convincing about that, I suggest you watch The Social Dilemma. It's a documentary that's come to us from many people that were frontline workers for Facebook, for Instagram, for Google, and they see the deeper agenda, and they're alarmed. And they're speaking out about it. And one of the voices that sort of become frontline is a man named Tristan Harris, and he has a corporate organization called the Center for Humane Technology. He's done some very useful, beneficial, educational TED Talks. So the cell phone, just to understand that the whole nature of it, the whole design is to get you addicted, and it's a bottom feeder. It's doing the opposite of protecting your senses. It's violating your senses. You're unprotected and you're being violated. And one very practical. I mean, you can look online for different tools and strategies for combating that addiction. You can even pair up with someone to have some accountability. One of the most effective things with the cell phone is if you can access, and you just go online to learn how, grayscale. Take the color out of your cell phone, and it has a huge effect on the brain and all the hits that you're getting. It's one of the most effective tools. So I think for iPhone it's grayscale mode, and I think for Androids it's black and white mode, but you can get the instructions for how to switch your phone to that online. So we're ending on a very, very practical note. But we can give this beautiful gift to ourselves and start protecting our hearts and our minds and our nervous systems. And it's the Buddha gave these instructions 2,500 years ago, and if we were beamed into life 2,500 years ago, we'd think, why did he have to talk about this? Compared to how bombarded we are now. So I'll end there. I'd really like time for people to ask questions or share anecdotes or anything. Please.
Anya, I have to go, but I would love to share a little thing. And I listened to your talk on Tuesday, same talk, double dipping today, and I like it because it stays in my mind. Uh, but this morning I was in a group, Dharma group, uh, and we got bombed by some sexual activities where 7 people came on with the weirdest thing ever. And a lot of people got upset with this. And I right away went back to the teaching of Tuesday, and it didn't affect me at all. I just completely just let it go. Like I didn't attach it. And then I talked to people after and I tried to explain about the six senses and how you shouldn't, it was just something that just passed, just like a TV, you just change the channel, because you don't like it. And then people kind of like, okay, but it was really to the point or exactly what this teaching. So anyway, I gotta go to work, but I just wanted to share with this because it was horrible, and because of that teaching, it just became kind of something that just passed away. Thank you very much, everyone. I gotta go.
Great.
It was horrible, by the way.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
Bye.
On that note,
Great. Patricia.
Does the Buddha talk about the senses in a hierarchy? Like, are some senses, like the six senses that you're talking about, I kind of think that some might be better than others, the way.
No, that's a great question. I've never been asked that question. That's a great question. Could everyone hear it? Patricia was asking about, does the Buddha do any hierarchy of the senses? Like that some are better than others? No, he doesn't. And I think, we're all really different. And so for some people, some senses are much more sensitive, than for others. And even, people that have been in education, they realize, there's different modes of learning. Some people are very kinesthetic learners. Some people are very visual learners. Most people are visual learners. And some people are very auditory. That's a good question. And I'll think about it, but I don't think so.
So chocolate cake, enjoying chocolate cake is okay.
Oh yeah. And what we want to do is we just want to really understand, and you can play with it as you're eating. Just this is pleasant sense contact. That's what it is. It's not going to take away my depression. It's not going, but I can be like very present here right now and enjoy this. And when you are, it's very interesting. When you're really present and you're really enjoying it and understanding it more for what it is, you don't have as much a desire to have another piece. Because there's something about that was fulfilling. There was something about that was real, and you showed up for it, and you're not asking the chocolate cake to deliver more than it can, and then things start to straighten out. It's really lovely. And while you're baking, Patricia, you can really like fully enjoy it and go, why am I enjoying it this? Because I've talked to other cooks, and for other cooks, often it's even like touching the food, smelling it, looking at it, and that this is fine to be alive in the senses. And then you can bring in the wholesomeness that's there, Like this is where you're creative. This is where you're very generous. This is where you're very generous to JP, you know, and to yourself. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. It's very. The more we understand the senses, the more that we will they'll be tethered, you know, and we'll become more the master and not so much the indentured servant. Yeah.
Yes,
Oh yeah, please, Kathy. Yes.
yeah, as I listen today, I'm thinking, well, first of all, I really appreciate I feel like I'm learning and thinking today, but I'm also comparing myself. As you know, I live alone. I'm a widow.
Mhm.
I'm retired. I feel I have the advantage of tuning in and thinking and solitude, etc. So I'm comparing myself to my family, and of course, as parents, we always think of our children as number one. How are they living their lives? So if you have grown children with families, they're engaged in parenting and work, and it just highlights to me how difficult it is to get into these areas of meditation or speculation, just thinking. When you are responsible, you're responsible to raising a child to the best of your abilities. You've signed on to being an employee and doing the best with your
Mhm.
clientele. So I don't know. I just feel it's so challenging for that. I'll call them my children. It's that younger generation that we all have, whether or not we have children. It's people who are fully, intensely engaged in the world. And I just wish it was easier for them.
Mhm. Yeah, I share the same, Kathy, and I think that the world has become, you know, the workplace has become quite a bit more demanding uh, for many people, and and it's much more complicated to raise children in this generation with social media and the power of the peer group. I mean, it's always been there, but not. It's just ratcheted up. So yeah, I agree. And the more that we can encourage our children to just be present in their bodies, you know,
Mm.
and that's if they're open to it, you know, like just there's a really good little pamphlet, clarity and no, it's clarity and calm for the busy person or something, and it's by Ajahn Suchito, and he's trying to take someone that's got a really, you know, intense life, and instead of like adding one more thing, he's trying to help them see ways that they can just take the way it already is and bring moments of presence in. You know, like you get in your car, and before you turn on the ignition, you just take 2 breaths, you know, and you're there with it. Just these, just inserting these slight things that take the edge off the. Yeah. Sujata, and then Scott.
I'm not sure if it's a question as much as just I know from my own experience and also listening to other monastics, this whole idea of how we here in this society emphasize this constant working the mind and thinking through our education and our work, and even more so now that people um, with the technology are accessible 24 hours and have trying to turn that off. So I know that sometimes what happens then, in order to switch it off, people reach for a drink or a substance in
Mhm.
order to
Mhm.
tune it down. And I just wonder if you can offer any comments or reflections on the power and the attraction of doing it that way rather than through a more meditative practice.
Well, I'm a little bit discouraged by what you just said because I think that's what the entire talk was. That's what I was trying to address the entire time I was talking is, seeing that pattern and then understanding it and then making choices to give a gift to oneself and figuring out ways to be a little bit more resourced and making wiser choices. So listen to the thought.
Yeah, no. I think the point I'm trying to make is that for those of us in the room, we get it, but it's those people, our our children or our friends who aren't meditating and end up making choices that are harmful. Yeah. Anyway.
I think like suggesting, maybe you sit and watch The Social Dilemma with them, and you don't need to bring in the Buddha's teachings. You can just talk about the way that things are set up right now and consumerism, and if there's any opening for people getting more on board to not be being so manipulated and so bought in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank
That's
you.
what I'd suggest. Yeah. Scott.
I want to be really brief because
Yeah.
I know we're out of time.
Yeah.
I had an experience yesterday. So I'm a musician, and I've just hired a social media consultant to help me with that aspect of my career. So my goals are really to get as many people as I can at my live shows so that I can share with them and do it in person, because that's what's most fulfilling for me, right? But to do that, I have to have an Instagram account, a Facebook account. I just posted on TikTok. I have a YouTube account, a website, and the list goes on. So to just like operate in today's world, those are the things that we need to do. And I guess I would just I really liked the way that you framed it today, that those platforms are designed to pull us away from the moment.
Totally.
Yeah,
Totally.
and to have us crave things that we don't have.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
Musicians struggle with that. Everybody on this call struggles with that.
Yeah.
And it's something that we have to help each other manage.
100%. Exactly. And be talking about more.
Mm-hmm.
Without any shame. Look, we're targeted. It's just I spend too much time on the internet because I'm a human being and I live in 2023, and it's designed to just take the shame away and start talking about it more, and being honest about the effect it's having on us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay, we'll end here. We're on number 2.
Compassion.
Yeah. So we'll end with a very short, very, very short meditation on compassion.
So if you can bring to mind someone you know with great physical or mental suffering, and while being aware of their particular difficulties, direct these phrases to them. May you be free of your pain and sorrow. May you find peace. And now send the phrases to yourself. May I be free of pain and sorrow. May I find peace. Now bring to mind someone who's been very supportive of you and send the phrases to them. May you be free of your pain and sorrow. May you find peace. Now bring to mind a neutral person, maybe a store clerk or somebody you pass in the street.
and send the phrases to them. May you be free of your pain and sorrow. May you find peace. And now bring to mind someone you have a difficult relationship with and send the phrases to them. May you too be free of your pain and sorrow. May you too find peace. May all beings be free of pain and sorrow. May all beings find peace. Remember that all beings face great potential suffering, no matter how fortunate their immediate circumstances may be. This meditation does not eliminate suffering. What we are doing is being able to acknowledge suffering, to open to it and respond to it with a tenderness of heart, which allows us to join with all beings and realize we are never alone. May the merit of our practice be shared with all sentient beings, named and unnamed. Alex, Therese, Blair, Lise. May all beings be well and happy.